liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
Well, there you are. Here I am. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Greetings, 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 and greetings. Once again, welcome to our program, The Silence of Our Friends. It seems like whenever I think I have a good program, there are always challenges getting it to you. But nonetheless, we have braved the storms and found some different ways to get it out to you. So if you're hearing me loudly and clearly, please log in. Please, if you're logged in, please sign in. Please use your favorite emoji. Please type something in the comment section because that helps us to know that people are there and we are here and you are continuously interested in what it is that has to be said tonight. One of the things that I need you to do for me, if you kindly will, is type in the subject matter. When you define the subject matter, it gives all broad minds an opportunity to converge on the one issue that we are hopefully plowing through. We target something because there's so many issues, in my opinion, that plague um, all demographics in this country at this point in time, but more particularly black, bronze, and brown skinned people in this country. And it's something that has not really been addressed. It's something that has not really been discussed. We see a lot of the ills. Seeing the ills and talking about the ills are two different things. Knowing that there are problems, systemic problems, racially motivated problems that have been initiated intentionally, in my view, deliberately by bigoted people, racist minded people, or if you don't like those terms, they're too strong. Maybe you want to say people who do not believe that all people are created in equal value from God's perspective. Now, that's huge. That's a huge statement. There are people, it's crazy. It is crazy. There are people currently and have always been in these United States of America, or this country called America, let's just refer to it that way, who do not believe that all people are equal based on skin color. Dr. King had it right. He nailed it as he normally did in his the second rendition, really, of the "I Have a Dream" speech delivered at Mason Temple there in Memphis, Tennessee, the night before his murder. When he closes, he gets to the close of the speech and he says that I have a dream that one day my four little children will not be judged on the color of their skin, but based on the content of their character. He nailed it because there are people who assess value and worth to people based on skin color. There are people, big time. And it's crazy to me that people believe, regardless of your achievements, how many of you can sign in with me on this? Regardless of one's achievements, regardless of one's academia, regardless of one's wealth or the accumulation thereof, or the attempts to accumulate wealth, regardless of one's family standings, how well you've done with the raising and rearing of family, marriage, business, any of the seven systems of influence that govern any socioeconomic society, regardless, it's still, from in many people's minds, please hear me, comes down to the color of people's skin. So I want you to type in the subject tonight: black slaves, and really it was a little too long to get into the window. Black skinned slaves is what I'm talking about, because slavery existed all throughout the world before the mid-Atlantic slave trade. The mid-Atlantic slave trade refers to black skin, bronze, and brown skin people, let's just say black skin people, being brought from Africa in 1619 across the Atlantic Ocean, where some nearly 2 million were either thrown over the side of the various slave ships, or took a dive in saying, "Before I be a slave, I'll be dead and buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free." But there were people who, and those of you that are in the Bessemer area, there's a municipal election that's going on today. You still have about 15 minutes to get to the polls and vote. Very, very, very important school board election, as well as the municipal election, which starts with the mayor of Bessemer and all of the connected offices there with all the 7 city council districts, so forth. All everything's up for grabs. And so our church had a political forum that was a huge success a few weeks ago. And if you have not viewed it, if you were not able to be there, you can pull it up on YouTube on the ministries, NLIM, New Life Interfaith Ministries YouTube page. It will do you well because a lot of things were discussed there. More particularly than anything, on the school board side, let's just start there. The very fact that the current school board has been relieved of their responsibilities, you might as well say, by State Superintendent Mackey, who has shut down the Bessemer Board of Education. And his words, his remarks that I've read, said something to the effect that this school board, the assembled school board, the voted-in school board, was of no value, no value. So that's crazy to me. That's crazy. Um, yes, and so that election is going on. There was much talk about the data centers, and I'll tell everybody that deal's already done. We can talk about it. You can say anything you like to say, but those papers have already been signed. If you don't believe it, go down Highway 150, which when we moved here was just barely a 2-lane state highway, and it was just crazy, and then it's gone from there to a 4-lane state highway. But now, as you get close to Bessemer, as it crosses, is bisected by Lake Shore, which that was put in not long ago, because I believed even then the city planners knew that because the zones were changed, that this kind of let's just say data center was planned, and it's big, 14 to 17 billion. That's what the letter B. And so all those issues come up. Yes. Good afternoon to everyone. Yeah, that's what they said. Theresa Thomas, I see school board expelled since 2025. Yes, and that was the second time, if my memory serves me correctly. Someone can fact check me on that. Pamela Diamonds is where, yeah, no value. That's what the state superintendent said about the Bessemer Board of Education. A.B. Jones is there. Good afternoon. Good evening to you. People get that often confused. Loretta Evans Curley is there. Thank you. Theresa Thomas. Yes, she's back. Thank you. Charles Turner. Yeah, black slaves, quote, not quote, but colon. Catch the whole title now. Permanent control. I want to talk to you tonight because I believe the reason there was black slavery in America, even though all throughout the Mediterranean, all throughout South America, there was slavery. And I'm going to get into it in a few minutes' time. But why go to Africa as far as the white Europeans that began this country? Can we delve into that, look into that, and then discover maybe what the ideology is today? Because I'm finding, as you study history, it shows you one thing, history shows us, is the capabilities. Make sure you're sharing. If you haven't shared yet, copy the link, send it to someone. No explanation needed. Send it to their personal device. Help us spread the word. And then come back and type that you have shared. You can also, if you're on Facebook, just press the word share. Facebook will take care of the rest. If you're on YouTube, press the word share and follow the instructions. Yeah, I'll get into that in a minute's time. Who else is Pamela Dobbins is there? Yes, thank you. Thank you all for being there. Who else is Faith Walker is there? E. Hale is there. Thank you. Yes, all is well, sir. And back to you, Charles, praying that all is well for you. Tauris is there. Bless you, sir. Givens, thank you, sir. Yes, has everyone logged in? Yeah. Good evening to you. Let's get into this and let's not miss. Everyone share. It takes about 7 underpinnings of any culture, of any society, to really make the society work. We call them here in America the seven mountains of influence, the seven mountains of influence. And again, by the way, those of you that are new to the channel, please make sure you like and share. Please make sure you comment in the comment section. That helps us to get the word out. Please do those kinds of things. That really helps us spread the word. It was Dr. King who said on one occasion, there's nothing in the world more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. On another occasion, he said, make the statement that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And then we have to get this and make sure we hold this in as an underpinning for our program and for our lives. There's nothing in the world more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. And did I say, I think I did, what will be remembered in the end will not be the words of our enemies, but in fact, the silence of our friends. So there's a goal. If I'm your black shirted, that's right, I wear a black shirt every time we do these programs. No theme, as you can see, just the shirt and the black, the color black reminds me of the fact that until or unless, maybe unless and until we as a people rise up and do something about our predicament here in this country, we well may be doing something to aid or abet, or by lack of doing anything, taking no actions, we may be, how do you say, uh, uh, cooperating with our own demise as a people. That's right. That's why I'm wearing the black shirt. Black for a funeral. There may be a funeral of this demographic. And there are things we have to do to see to it that we are still here. So, again, I'm here for that purpose, and I'm here for all of this. Again, when supremacists and racists, one of the ways you can tell if a person is racist, bigoted, or supremacist in their thought process, their ideations, even though they will deny it every single time, uh, is when they are over education and they take certain bends in education. I had it happen to me. Being raised up in during integration, my mother being an educator, and then being infiltrated, or how do you say, infiltrating what were white schools, and then I, after college, realized that they were manipulating what they told me about the true history of this country. The American Revolution had a slant on it. Slavery had a slant on it. The Indians, as they were called earlier, before the name was changed, and I agree with that, to Native Americans. They were the original people of this country. So how can you discover a country that is already inhabited? I was never taught that. But then getting to the real deal, I realized that when racists and bigoted-minded people, or white supremacists, or people who have that kind of mindset, are over education, they tend to control how much of the truth you know, because they bend the facts towards themselves. They have the tendency to do something called whitewashing history. They redact it, and we have in America now the greatest redaction minded people I've ever seen. People who just change the history. That's a problem for me. That's a problem when I see it with church history in denominations. I see this happening. People adding people to the history that really were not there. They played an important role, but the role that they're being assigned is not a role that they actually played in history. So again, let's keep going. We must learn to speak as a people, speak out, because it becomes necessary to ensure that people know that, number one, we are alive, and number two, that we are due respect. So we're living in a system, and one of the systems as a people, we've there's a excuse me, sociological term called learned helplessness. We talk about this every time we have a program. It's a state that occurs after a person has experienced a stressful or horrific ongoing conditions, and they come to believe that they are unable to control or change the situation, in even when there are opportunities for those changes, i.e., voting. i.e., speaking out, i.e., being a part of how do you say, financially supporting campaigns. I do that. Not only am I pro the Democratic as opposed to the Republican mindset, because of the two, I believe that the Democratic condition in America better speaks to, better addresses what Jesus would do were he to have been here at this point in time. That's my belief system. I don't believe Jesus would be a Republican. I don't believe that. I don't believe that the MAGA Republicans, let's say that better that way, and maybe that's a better tone. I don't believe that MAGA Republicans reflect the mindset of everything I read about Jesus Christ. And so I struggle, man, serious struggle with people who are in ministry, who have mega ministries, and probably the mega ministries are MAGA ministries. And you did you see what I did there? Yes, that's MEGA versus MAGA. Some of you'll get that by next Thursday, but that's okay. We came in with Sister Alicia Keys on Lift Every Voice, the rendition that was penned. And I talk about these historical things every time we're here together, because I just think some things you give life to once you discuss it repeatedly. And remember, repetition is the mother lode, LODE, the mother lode of all learning. You correct improper learning, the improper learning of facts versus fiction, and you how do you say, erase in the subconscious mind incorrect information and replace it with correct information by way of, how do you say, repetition. So repetition is the mother lode of all learning. So again, let's go on. Remember, there's 7 systems that govern Proverbs chapter 9, verses 1 and 2, that govern societal influences. And again, there's the mountain of religion. It's a system. That's why I don't like the word religious. I like better the word spiritual. We're called to be spiritual people, spiritually minded versus carnal minded. It's possible to be religious and be religiously wrong. And I think that's what we're seeing in the church, the, how do you say, the holistic idea of church in this country. Then, of course, there's the system of family, the system of education, the system of government, the system of the arts and entertainment. How many of you all are still with me? Arts, and then media, and then business and economics always go together. And so let's talk. And again, the subject, if you haven't typed it in, please type it in: black slaves, colon, permanent control. And I'm really talking about black skinned slaves, uh, because slavery, as I said, existed before the mid Atlantic slave trade. I'm going to give you a little history. Are you all ready for history? And there are many of you that are probably better historians than I. I love history because it gives you a definition of the true capabilities of the human condition. Everyone, type in your favorite emoji. Go to your emoji screen and put your favorite emoji in the chat, if you will. And, on the subject of the 7 mountains or 7 systems of influence that govern every society, the 7th, as I referred to a minute ago, is business and economics. And did you realize that this chief administrator, let's just say, of this country, he otherwise can go by 45/47. We don't call names because names gives life to situations, and I don't want to do that. On the subject of business and economics, these have you read where some thousands of pounds of beef, inferior probably beef, is being brought into this country as competition? The chief administrator of this country is saying he's doing it to drive down the prices, the over $6 per pound of beef. He's bringing in inferior beef from other places and these cattle rustlers. I forget what they're called, the official name here in America. They voted for this chief administrator of this country, 45/47. I think something, an overwhelming percentage, like over 60 something percent. And now he has took a pencil and stuck it in their eyes because now he's bringing in competition to the American rancher. I forget the name that they're called by, but anyway, I just thought that, I mean, because that's business and economics right there. And when you talk about this, now the same people that elected you and placed you in office, you are no friend to them and no kin to them. And I pray that these midterm elections and the elections, general elections in November, will, yeah, I'm with you, Pamela. She said, I heard about that. It's a good thing I don't eat beef. Yeah. And then if even if you are a red meat eater, you want to stay away from. I learned this. I worked in Winn Dixie, which is one of my three jobs in college. Yeah, he did the same thing to the soybean farmers. That's right. Uh, you know, this isn't funny anymore. This is what these people elected. This is what we tried to tell them. Vice President Harris, Kamala Harris, tried to, not Kamala, that's an insult, Kamala. Harris tried to tell them, many of us tried to tell them, and it isn't a joke anymore. It isn't a joke anymore. Adolf Hitler destroyed Germany, much the same as this man through his Heritage Foundation manual, Project 2025, is attempting to destroy this country so that it can be just pillaged and taken over by a dictator. That's what a dictator has to do. One of the final steps, and I've done programs on this, to dictatorship is that you have to destroy the regime, the current regime. Germany was a democracy before Adolf Hitler. We don't want to get into that. Okay. And so when I worked at Winn Dixie, who was that? Somebody says that, yeah, Pamela, Winn Dixie was my first job in high school too. Wow. Yeah. I had three jobs when I was in school, in college. And Winn Dixie was one of those jobs. And they circulated you in various departments. And when I worked in the beef department, I realized that I would never eat beef, and I was broke and poor. But I would never eat beef. I was a beef eater then. In those tubes, in the tubes, where it's already, you can't see the meat. It already has the plastic tubing with the little, what do you have it? The metal tie on each end. Because I watched the meat and everything, all the scraps from all other cuts of meat and kinds of meat go into the meat grinder. And I never stopped to ask the question, how did this quote unquote meat get into that tubing, the plastic tubing? It went through a meat grinder, and the meat grinder at the very end had the tubing. And you don't care about this, but there's all kinds of scraps you threw in there and called it beef. And that's why it's the least expensive cut, the least expensive meat there is in beef category, the tubed, that you cannot see the beef. And you can fry it. It acts just like beef and all that. But I'm telling you, it was some of everything that we put in the grinder to put it in, because that's what we did. That's what we were told to do. All right. So let's get back on the subject. Again, black slaves. What's the reason for black slavery? Permanent control? Did the framers and fathers and people who thought out? Because here's the question. Here's the question. Okay. Are you all with me? If you're with me, just type it in there. I'm still here. Type in, I'm still on the bus. Are you with me? Because here's my question. Here's my question. Here's what we have to deal with tonight. Why, what I say? Why did not the Europeans enslave each other and leave the black skinned, then freed people alone on the continent of Africa? Why didn't you leave them alone? Why didn't you get some people from somewhere else? Why did you bring the 10 to 15 million, let alone the 2 million that approximately that you lost during the mid-Atlantic passage? Why the black skinned man? There are people everywhere. But why go to Africa? Am I digging deep? Why Africa? And there were slaves that predated. I'm going to tell you about it. That predated black slavery in America. There were slaves all over the world. Stay with me. So when the settlers, because what we're looking for is was the idea current control of a people that was supposed to and has dovetailed, manifested, matured into permanent control. I think the idea was not just slavery, it was control of a people. There are some people, there are some demographics of people that don't feel good about themselves unless they're controlling other demographics of people. That makes them the king of the universe in their small minds. Yes, stay with me, Pamela. I might circle back around and pick that up. I see what you're saying, but here was the pros. All right, here such was the following was the case in America in the early colonial days. And remember, we talked about this in a previous show. Colonialism is a nice word. Okay, colonizers, same word for plantation owners, same word for enslavers. Okay, they never taught me that in school. They just taught me about the pilgrims and their colonies. But now I know what colonies really were. It was a break off from the parent country. And the colonizers used slavery to do what? To mimic, to make the the country that they had currently taken over, let's just say, or become visitors with the idea of taking over in their own branch of their own franchise of the parent company. Am I talking right? I like that, Theresa Thomas. Yes, excellent workers, free labor. You already are there, but watch it. Permanent control. We have to stay with the idea. Yes, Pamela. Charles Darwin and his theory taught that evolution. Uh, his theory of evolution didn't help the case at all. I agree because okay, so such was the case in early colonial America. They had colonists grew labor intensive crops like sugar, tobacco, rice. I've told you this before, and cotton that required large. Watch this word. Controlled workforces to generate immense wealth. Let alone the fact all of these controlled workers were excellent workers, but more importantly, they did not have wages. So it's like when you brought these slaves in, 10 to 15 million over the course of time, you kept 100% of the profits of the thing they produced. Yes, okay. There were some failed alternatives to black skin slavery. Indigenous population, that's the Native American, Indian, in Americas, face, here it is, catastrophic mortality rates from European disease. The Europeans brought diseases. Many of them were diseased themselves in this newfound land, and they brought diseases that they used to kill off, let's just say, the indigenous people of this country. Uh, from the European diseases and European indentured servants were expensive. You had the opportunity to use some of the poor European people who were here, but they were expensive because they were not free. Indentured slavery meant that they worked off the debt owed to other white skinned people, Europeans. So it wasn't free. It was temporary. Indentured slavery of their own people, white skinned people enslaving white skinned people was expensive because that was designed to work off a debt. Same was true within the Jewish community. Even under the old covenant, you had indentured slavery. Under Moses' law, you had that to work off the debts and things of that nature, but it was temporary. And these people regained legal rights. The white skinned people would have rights once their debts were worked off. Am I talking right? But the real essence, we had to work these prison farms, these prison camps. Later, we had no wages. We were owned as chattel slaves, which means you had no rights forthcoming. No wages were paid to you. You were property of white skinned people in America. But watch me now. The real essence that drove the engine that drove, what is my time here? The engine that drove slavery, black skin slavery, was permanent control, which means enslaved Africans, and please hear this, it provided a lifelong hereditary labor force. A hereditary labor force. That means the parent would have children on the slave plantation, which the children became the property of the white enslaver, colonizer, plantation owner, whatever else have you, which meant that now this was perpetual. Not only did Jim Bob, let's just say Jim and Nancy, belong to the slave owner, the enslaver, but all the children they had, and they would pass their children to their children. To the slaves would be passed on as property to the enslaver's family. And this went on for generations and generations. So it was a lifelong hereditary labor force that could not legally quit. So this means you got the best of all worlds from a labor perspective. This is all about money. Remember, I told you my attorney friend said, money is your answer. Now, what did you say was your question? Money is your answer. Now, what did you say was your question? So what am I saying? I'm saying here that the real mechanism behind black slavery, differing from all other forms and demographics of slavery that history has recorded, I'm going to get into it in a minute's time, just stay with me, was that the enslaved Africans provided a lifelong hereditary labor force that could not legally quit or easily, watch it now, blend into local populations. Ooh. That means even if they escaped, because we was black, colored, that's why they called us as a people spooks, darkies, negroids, Negroes, because you couldn't blend in. The other world slaves that history records could escape. If it was in the case of indenture slavery, it was just for a period of, there was a time I said 5 to 7 years. They worked off their debt. They were returned into their societies. They had rights. But we, as a black skinned people, even if you ran away from the slave plantation, where you gonna hide? Where you gonna hide this black skin? So it was threefold. It was a permanent control of black people, because as enslaved Africans provided long hereditary labor force, right? That is perpetual. You pass it on to your children, their children, the children. Everybody's children inherited the slave's children. So as the generations of the enslavers progressed, so did the generations of the enslaved progress. And one, and then two, they could not change their job, say, oh, I've had it with this, I'm walking out of this thing. Nope, that wasn't the case. And then number three, in the case of their escape, where are they going to go? Who are you going to blend in with, even if you had to escape to the north? So let's talk about the historicity of this, all right? Slavery, and this is an important point, slavery existed everywhere in Southern Europe, North Africa, okay, Northern Africa, like Egypt, right? You read about the children of Israel building those pyramids, and they were dark skinned people. I won't say they were black, but they were like your first cousins. Nobody wants to tell you that because Egypt is a city in Africa, the country of Africa. Okay. Um, let's just keep going. North Africa and the Near East. Uh, Slavery had existed since antiquity. So, as far back as you can go in history, you find humans enslaving humans. But that's not my question. And I'm just doing this for the history of it. My question is, why did the white Europeans go to Africa out of all the other continents they could have visited to choose to extract a black skinned man and bring him against his will to this country to build their plantations and to build this country? Let's keep going. Anyone could be a slave, regardless of skin color or religion. This is in the history of time and as it relates to the subject of slavery. Uh, McKay, in the book A History of Western Civilization, describes the slave trade as being an integral part of the Mediterranean economy. So this is the Middle East. So this is proof to the fact that slavery. But the point I'm building, the case I'm building is, why did the European settlers in this country, the fathers and framers, uh, those who precede the fathers and framers of this country, why did they go to Africa? Because it was the idea of permanent control of the black race. That was a race that they could exercise. If we're bringing them in by the millions, they're going to outnumber us. But if we control them perpetually, yes, they will be here. Yes, they will outnumber us, but we will be in control of them, their destinies, their ability to rise and succeed forever. And that's really what the voting process is about. You're voting for your freedom. This is really what your education is about. It's really what uh, having your mind taught spiritually so that you avoid the slave mentality. It's one thing to be a slave physically and to be cuffed and to be beaten and to be all of those egregious things, to be um, have no rights and to be the property of someone else, and so and to live against you in a place that's against your will, against your choosing, so forth and so on. And then there's quite another thing to be freed from physical slavery, but you're still bound in the way you think. When I say bound, I mean you have boundaries. You read the Bible, and I used to do this, and the Lord corrected me. You read the Bible and you see the stories, and you have celebration faith, you have admiration faith, you admire the people that are the characters of the Bible, not understanding that they are human just like you. And the reason God used them was to show you your potential. You see, many people come into following Jesus Christ, come into the church, but they never have their minds renewed. And so they're left as saved slaves. I don't think I've ever said that. They're saved, they love Jesus, but their mind is still limited because no one has ever taught that out of them. And as they grow in God, you still see the limitations. You know, I read a story once. I'm coming back to my history lesson in just a minute. I read a story once. I always wondered when I watched, let's just say, an American Western movie or something, and you see the white skinned cowboy, right, riding the horses, which they learned from the indigenous people of this country, right? And they come to, let's say, the saloon, the bar, to chase the prostitutes or buy a drink or whatever, limited entertainment. So you did whatever you did, and you see them get off the horse and just put the reins that control where the horse's direction was, just right on the hitching post, and they wouldn't tie it. They just throw it on there, and sometimes tie a little flimsy knot. And I always wondered as a child, why wouldn't the horse just leave? You'll see the same thing in a circus with an elephant. You'll see him just chained with a very small linked chain to a very small stake in the ground, and that pachyderm weighs thousands of pounds, and he can, and every now and again you'll see one elephant escape the slave mentality because he'll realize I have more strength than this. But more often is the case, he's just right there because what happens in the slave mentality, such as the same thing that happens with a little colt, the small horse, the small pachyderm, small pup, the elephant. They tie him to a small stake when he's an infant, and as he grows, they tie a bigger stake, maybe perhaps a larger chain, until after a while he's grown and he realizes when he was a pup, a little infant elephant, he pulled against the stake and he couldn't. His boundaries were there. He couldn't pull it up, and he in his adolescence, the stake became larger, the chain became stronger. Pulled against it for years and couldn't pull it up. So now he's an adult, and in his mind, he knows you can't you can't pull up this stake. You can't break this chain, even though the truth is he could. And the same is true with the horse. The 1,500-pound horse could pull that little rein off of the hitching post and take off for his own freedom. But in his mind, he thinks he can't because he's slave. He's enslaved in his mind. Who am I talking to here? Have you all shared this? All right, so let's go back. And in the work by McKay, A History of Western Civilization, he describes the slave trade as being an integral part of the Mediterranean economy. Sources of this trade were, watch me now, white Christians from the Balkans, Balkans, brought from the Ottomans, Ottomans, Jews and Muslims from Iberia as a result of something called the Reconquista. The Reconquista, Reconquista, Reconquista. Now, the Reconquista is a centuries long series of campaigns by Christian kingdoms to retake the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim rule. So that means white skinned Christians had Iberian slaves, Muslim slaves, the Ottomans, the Balkans, and Gaunches. Let me make that spelling correct. Guanches from the Canary Islands. And I remember studying this years ago. From the Canary Islands in the early 1500s, the source of slaves from the Reconquista dried up, and Iberia and the Genasi, traders found a new source of slaves in Black and Berber, Berber, Africans. This came in at the same time as the expansion of Spanish colonies in South America and the abolishment abolishment of the encomienda system. These events started the transatlantic slave trade, a triangular trade system that started as a purely, listen, economic development. I'm going to let you all catch up to this. Yes, Teresa, this is great. I am sure the enslaved were in a state of shock, confusion in many cases. The only thing they had to have in common was skin color, different languages, cultures, and more. Yeah, particularly in the case of Africa, you have a continent that has like 160 different uh, tribes, 160 different languages, close to 200 on that one continent. And there they are now enslaved in on slave ships going up gangplanks to be loaded into these very small, almost too small for animals, very muchly too small for animals, and definitely for humans. They can even communicate to themselves in many instances because they were black. That's the only thing they had in common, because that's a very divided. How do you say continent, Africa? Yeah, I think it is the largest, or maybe second largest continent in land mass. Maybe, but the larger amount of people, the population, I think is the largest continent of the seven. Someone correct me and fact check me on that if I'm wrong. I don't want to put out wrong information. All right, so here's the real question. So everything about black slavery was purely economic and control. There's a saying, yeah, conquistadors of Spain, yes, and Portugal, economic expansion. They were wow. Lucy Lee says Nigeria has 520 languages. I'm telling you, Africa, I think it's 160 or 170 something different tribes. Maybe the languages outnumber the tribes. I'm not sure, but I just know it's superfluous. Some people say superfluous, but anyway, the real question: why didn't Europeans? I got to wind this thing up. Why didn't Europeans just enslave other Europeans and ship them overseas instead of enslaving black skinned people? Well, I told you it would be very short term. It would only be the case of indentured slavery, working off loans, working off debts, working off a poverty ridden situation. But one explanation from Frank Wilderson, professor of UC Irvine, from his work, quote, Red, White, and Black, cinema and structure of U.S. antagonisms, states that Europeans, and this is a direct quote, Europeans could easily have provided 50,000 white slaves a year to the New World without serious disruption to either international peace or existing social institutions that generated and supervised these potential European victims, end quote. And that the quote costs of enslavement would have been driven down exponentially had Europeans taken white slaves directly to America. Shipping cost composed by far the greater part of the price, end of quote. He continues that not only would European civil society have been able to absorb the social consequences of these losses, for example, class warfare would have been unlikely the event, this rate of enslavement, but civil society would also have enjoyed lower labor costs, a faster development of the Americas, and higher exports and income levels on both sides of the Atlantic. He concludes that, quote, what white slaves would have gained in economic value, they would have lost, watch it now, in symbolic value, which is another point. When, I want to say this in the nicest way possible. In America, the jewel of American civilization is white skinned people being on top, particularly in the case of white skinned youths. More particularly the case being made of white skinned youthful females. That's the pearl of white society. So when he talks about uh, losing symbolic value, the symbolism would have been, what would it look like in this country to have white skinned people enslaved? And this is really, this is where white entitlement is born. Y'all aren't talking to me today. Maybe you're listening. Perhaps you're processing. Basically, Wilderson's explanation seems to be that white Europeans are simply driven by an evil obsession. Listen, this is a white skinned man, I believe. An evil obsession with dominating and subjugating people based on skin color. I almost felt the Holy Spirit touch me on that one. Because this is truth. That there isn't really an economic or practical reason why they do this. In fact, they do this despite strong economic incentives rather, not to. because whiteness slash white culture is based on exploitation and exploitation by violence. I think y'all probably pulled out by now. You're probably going to get your ham or chicken sandwich by now. See, this is why the church of Jesus Christ has been instituted into the world is to according to St. Matthew chapter 5, Jesus on the Sermon of the Mount teaches that uh, you born again people are supposed to be like a city, and there was one in his backdrop that was set on the hill, and he gives them a metaphor. He says, the light of that city cannot be hidden. Everyone can see it. He said, no man takes a candle and puts it under a bushel, but he puts it on a candlestick. He says, you're the light of the world, not of the church. You're supposed to enlighten people. And even though I'm getting in trouble with these issues I bring up, I think I'm in my place. I know I am, because I see too much at 63.8% or so, according to the Pew Foundation, of this country being churched or having some association with Jesus Christ. But yet in these 7 systems of influence, we don't see these same statistics of balance, same statistics of truth, same statistics of correctness come forth. Oh, my hour is almost up. Is this actually the case that white-skinned people are possessed, as the author says? I want to use this: obsessed with the issue of subjugating black-skinned people. They get some because it's passed on. I don't think people just intend to be this for the devil of it. I just think it's passed on. It's learned, and you can't help people unlearn a thing until you show them something else. And it takes a long time, because it takes a bit of courage, fortitude, and knowledge to show people another way and other ways. See, is this actually the case? Did Europeans have no real reason to pick or choose blacks for slavery other than not liking dark-skinned people? One of the traditional explanations that has been tossed around for the origins of racism against blacks amongst whites is that because of the strong commercial incentives to get cheap labor for the Americas, white European colonists enslaved Africans because labor shortages meant the costly practice makes, here it is, economic sense. So that means that black skin was sold to the highest bidder, figuratively and legally, and literally. Black skinned people were sold to the highest bidder because the black skin meant it answered 2 questions. Yes, I can fulfill my obsession with dominating and subjugating black skinned people. At the same time, I can do it at a profit. I brought them in. They can't escape. If they do, they can't blend in. They have no rights. Where will they go? And I can permanently control a people. You see, economic liberalism seemed to imply that enslaving your fellow man was wrong. This is another program. I can't get into it much because here's my time. It says this to white skin and many white skinned people. And I don't want to paint with too broad of a broad brush, but they had some sort of indwelling consciousness that said, if I'm white skinned and I enslave my white skinned equal, that is wrong. He's a fellow man. But this Negro over here is not a man. And if he is a man, and thus brings in all the animalistic depictions from slavery and post-slavery, so forth and so on. But even if he is a man, he is not equal. And this is essentially why white-skinned people, as a general whole, can never accept black people as their equals, as their fellows, equal in ability, equal in ingenuity, equal in value, equal in ability, capability, equal in ingenuity, equal in intelligence, equal on all levels. Because for you to admit that would be for you to admit that your forebears, your ancestors, all the way back to antiquity, as far as that goes, as far as black enslavement is concerned, you would have to admit they were wrong. And you would have to admit that the black man is your fellow man. The only difference is skin color. And there are just not that many people that are willing to do it. I'm closing now. You see, Europeans then had to come up with an ideological justification why the principles of liberalism, human rights, agency, the freedoms and values, equal values, would not apply to slaves. Thus originates the racist theories that blacks are categorically different than whites in all levels. I close. What are you all saying over there? I'm just coming over here. Are you all talking right over there? And you have to understand this, and this is why you have to take a stand, because this is something they call or refer to as institutional racism. It's 7:35. I gotta let you all go. Institutionalized racism. It's passed on. It's this mindset that doesn't like to be toyed with. You see, in the old school before HD washer machines, is it washing machine or washer machines, whatever it is, the term is accurately. Before the HD, you had the barrel in the center, and you opened it from the top, and in the center of the barrel where the clothes were, you poured in your, fabric softener or whatever else have you, the detergent, but you had to have an agitator in the middle. That's what that plastic tube was, or whatever it was. Maybe in some cases it was metal. You had to have the agitator, because the agitator, without the agitation, could not get the dirt out of the clothes. You would just spin it around circularly, and you would just spin around the dirt. It would go through cycles, rinsing and whatever else have you. Bubbles would come in there, but whatever else have you. But you couldn't get the dirt out. You have to have agitators. And this is what a lot of people just don't have the courage to do. For the truth to hit where it needs to hit, you have to have, let's say it this way, anointed agitators. It was business philosopher Jim Rohn, Rohn, or Rohn. Some people, I always pronounce it Ron, but I think more people pronounce it Rohn. But it's spelled Rohn. I have I think he has several books, but I have one by him. I forget the title of it anyway. Sincerity is not the test of truth. We must not make this mistake. He must be right. He's so sincere. He goes on to say it is possible to be sincerely wrong. We must judge truth by truth, and then sincerity by sincerity. And I'll say this, just as there's a time to keep silent, and the scripture teaches us that in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 7, but it also says there's a time to speak evenly, all right? And we cannot afford to be silent any longer. You all type something in the chat. I'm winding up here. Silence is, some would say, golden to them. I would say only until one's family and friends become negatively affected by wrongdoing. Others would say silence is great to them. I would say until someone's voice becomes necessary to save your life or corroborate your innocence. Silence is compromise. Silence is complicity with erroneous thinking. Silence is agreement with sanitized history. Silence is co-signing with controlled racist, bigoted, and supremacy mentality. Silence is equity and fairness in reverse. Silence robs equity and fairness. Um, rob supremacy better of ever hearing the truth and having the opportunity to change. Silence is the voice of continuous ethnic mistreatment. Silence validates inferior treatment. Silence is the approval of being objectified and maligned. Silence is often mistaken for agreement and consent. Silence is the devastation of a child being uncontrolled, untrained, and undisciplined by its, you know it, silent parents. Silence is the ostrich syndrome. Silence is one level of maintaining and perpetuating cloaked ignorance. Black, bronze, and brown children must know how to correctly respond to racism because it's everywhere, which they can only know when we have not been silent. Truth does not require error to be silent in order to be in control. Error, however, demands silence to be the silence of truth, to take control of, dominate, and devastate any situation. Speaking the truth is not a crime, withholding it is. And I'm just telling you, how many criminals do you know? They are silent and they know it. Who is it? Pamela says, how many books uh, can be written off of these podcast episodes? And she goes on to say, many. Oh man, that's something. You're right. That's another thought. Yes, I need a couple of things I'm believing for to help me get the message out and leave it recorded so that it's in book form. So many things to be done. So again, blessings and peace to everyone. Tomorrow is what's today? Monday. Tomorrow is voting day in Bessemer. I think I said, we had a few more minutes to get to polls. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Again, you have citywide elections from the mayor's office and all of the 7 council persons in Bessemer. Huge issues that are before the people, and government is for the people and by the people. And the same holds true for the Bessemer Board of Education. Very, very important issues because that board now is in by State Superintendent of Education Mackey. That board has been sat down and silenced. And his comment was they serve little or no value. And I'm placing it mildly. He said it much more ardently than that. So if you live in the Bessemer area, you need to be voting. If you have people who live in the Bessemer area, the cutoff or whatever else have you of Bessemer, you need to be voting 7A to 7P. Blessings and peace to all of you. And I'll look forward to see you the next time for the silence of our friends. You all type something in the chat before we go, and I'm going to leave the chat open. I'm going to play Sister Keys, Lift Every Voice as the outro plays. You can still type in whatever you
Lift every voice and sing till earth and